Welcome to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio, Radio for the Ready-Minded, the podcast for the prepared. We're here tonight or today, whenever you're listening, with Scott, Shane, and Paris. And we have an exciting episode for you today. We're going to talk about how trust is the currency of the future. And we've got a few things that we're going to talk about to kind of lay the groundwork about why that's the case and what that means. Before we do, though, we want to just remind everybody to go to our website, preppertalkradio.com. Please support the show and check out our resources there. Check out our affiliate links. And if you're going to get prepared anyways, you might as well support the show and get some of the discounts that we have available for you with all the different codes that we have. And one of our favorites is Survival Frog. Yeah, if you go to survivalfrog.com and use code PrepperTalk10, the number 10, so you will get 10% off on that. And that is one of our, they have pretty much a ton of different kinds of gear. They have all kinds of equipment, gear, food. One of their famous things that we've talked about, we love, is their canned meats. So protein is a big deal when it comes to food preparation and food storage. And they have 25 years shelf life meats, chicken, beef, great stuff. So check it out, survivalfrog.com, PrepperTalk10 as the code as you're checking out for 10% off. So we're going to talk a bit about, also remember to go to our website, our Facebook group, Emergency Prep and Self-Reliance. So today we're going to talk about trust is the currency of the future. And it's based off of a talk given by Shane. It was, I don't remember the woman's name, but it was given at Hillsdale
Catherine
College.
Austin Fitz. Yeah.
What's her name again?
Catherine Austin Fitz.
And it was given at a Hillsdale College presentation or forum or convention or some kind. And for those of you who know anything about Hillsdale College, they are very conservative. They're very anyways, our kind of people usually, for most of our listeners, are just good information, good constitutionalists that just really understand what's really happening in the world and how our rights are being stripped away. And this lady talks a lot about how central banks, we're going to kind of base this talk today off a video, and we'll probably put it in the show notes for you to watch yourself on how central banks plan to control you. And at the end there, she goes into how trust is the currency of the future. And we're going to kind of get a little bit of discussion, and then you guys can go watch the video and kind of fill in the holes.
Well, and I think what she's saying is that trust will not necessarily be the currency of the future for everyone, right? Because obviously we have the dollar. The dollar is the opposite of trust, if you ask me. The dollar gets its value initially from trust, right? Initially it was backed by something, by gold. It hasn't been for a long time. And the dollar gets its value from force, is really what it comes down to. And I think that will persist, whatever the next change will be. Digital, the dollar is pretty much digital right now anyway, whether it's a cryptocurrency or whatever you want to call it. There will be a new system that will emerge here. But what I'm personally seeing, and I think I see a lot of others saying this as well, is that we see a lot happening with gold right now, right? Gold is going to back whatever comes out, not necessarily what happens in the U.S., but what happening worldwide with banks and countries and so forth. And there is nothing better than gold and silver when it comes to trust and confidence. And so I wanted to point out that stark difference between what we're using now. I mean, cryptocurrencies are, if you ask me, there's zero trust there as well. That can be argued, especially with Bitcoin, right? And I am no expert, and that's not the topic for today. But the stark difference between the dollar, where the dollar is going, where currencies in general in the world are going, to zero trust. That's kind of a new policy. We could talk about zero trust as well. That is an entire policy. And that is essentially that everything is going digital, and it will require no trust. It requires zero trust, in that everything will be validated, everything will be tracked and traced and so forth. And so that's what zero trust kind of means. But the and of course I always say this, you probably get tired of me hearing this, of me saying this, is look to the past and you'll see the future. And a little bit of twist on that, right? So just like what Catherine Austin Fitts is saying is that the currency of the future will be relationships of trust. I'm not sure if I entirely understand what that means. So I wanted to have this little discussion with you guys and see if we can kind of hash this out. What exactly does that mean? And what exactly does that look like?
That's a big loaded question.
Yeah. You're welcome.
It's like let's shotgun this against the wall and see what it actually ends up being.
It sticks, yeah.
There's different levels of trust, and I like how you started with the dollar, right? The dollar had trust originally, and it was backed by value. Now it's backed by might, right? There's zero evidence of anything backing the dollar because it's a debt note, and the United States is really, truly, we're pretty much insolvent right now. We're floating on false dollars. We're floating on a false economy. And there's really nothing backing it other than the might of our military might, our economic might, right?
Mm-hmm.
The false strength of these systems. Well, if we get pulled into a conflict, which, we're already pulled into conflicts, but if we get pulled into a huge conflict that then starts draining more of our economic status and more of our military might, that's going to devalue the dollar even more. But it's easy for another country or group of countries to come in at any point and say we're done with the dollar because the global trust factor between the United States and other countries is low.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The trust between countries I think it's not at an all-time low, but it's trending down. And you can see that with what happened with Ukraine when they came in and he tried to bully his way into a new deal in the White House. And since then, he's been making deals with other countries, right? And they're all talking bad about the U.S., of course. But we're seeing that the trust is diminishing. And I look at this conversation as much as a warning to people to say, hey, look, banks are a necessary evil in our Babylonian society, in our current scheme of operations. However, there are ways around it. There's the dollar in print-ish, but then there's also gold and silver, and there's trade. And trade only works when there's trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can really dive deep into that, but it really, at the end of the day, it's, do I believe, let's just say it's you and me, Shane. Do I believe that if I give you 50 pounds of beans, that you'll give me something of equal value to return to me, right? And that's where we, as a country, we're going to struggle because honesty also and morality also is at an all-time low.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to be out to get you or to get
you're absolutely right. And I want to chime in before I lose this thought. Like you said, Scott, the dollar is debt. Mm-hmm. It is, JP Morgan, this quote always rings in my ears is gold is money. Everything else is credit. And what is credit? It's debt, right? Credit is kind of the nice way of saying debt, right? It's kind of the sanitized word of debt, right? Debt is evil. And well, I don't want to be in debt, but I'll take some credit. Yeah, I like credit. That's a positive word, right? It evokes positive thoughts, but it's
marketing spin.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is.
It's marketing, and that's what the dollar
dressing
is.
It up. It's putting lipstick on a pig.
Mm-hmm. And like you say, the confidence of the dollar. You look at it compared to other currencies, it's still holding up pretty well. But because the U.S. dollar is a trap, it is a debt trap. The more currency, the more dollars the Federal Reserve prints, the U.S. government sends out there, the more of a trap it is for everyone else. Until they, like you say, Scott, until they decide to say, you know what, no more of this. Here's our new currency, which, in my opinion, everything's going to be based on, maybe not backed by gold in particular. That's where I see things going. The craziness that's going on out there in gold, with gold and precious metals, that is all the only reason I can think of why that's happening is that everyone is scrambling to get what they can while they can. And then when the system breaks, they won't be able to get any more. So you only have what you have at that moment.
I think a lot of the things, that she went in this video, it's going back to kind of the video that we're basing this on, is she goes through the whole process of how central banks are working to digitize currencies. And one of the examples that she shares in there is, going back to the 2020 era, if somebody if we get on a lockdown and they say you can't go out or you can't go do things on certain days, and your currency is digitized, they can literally block you from buying things on Wednesday at 5 o'clock or later, or Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever date. And so it's like, okay, now my normal way of transacting has been limited or restricted or controlled 100%. So now the other part of it is, okay, if I can't go to the store and transact there, what's going to happen with farmers markets? What's going to happen with local trade, amongst neighbors? That's where I think we're going to need to trust our neighbors and know who we can trust of our neighbors. Frankly, there was a lot of 800 number hotlines. I think there was recently a hotline that was Chuck Schumer put out one, or somebody put out a hotline about, hey, call, and if you see anything illegal, call. And everybody was calling and reporting him, or something. I don't know, it was some funny thing like that. So, I mean, the reality is that there were, during the 2020 era and the CO, VID, they had people, they had hotlines. Like if your neighbor wasn't wearing that face diaper, or if or they were out, not within 6 feet, closer than 6 feet, you could call and report them. Well, you can't trust that guy. You can't trust that neighbor. And that's kind of the idea, is that if the other thing that there was a little bit later in this video, she shared with one of the things she said is, what's cool about Catherine Fitz is that she actually worked for the central banks for a long time.
Yep.
So she knows the inner workings. And she even said, she says, we're actually taught how to pretzel talk. That's the word she uses. We're taught how to pretzel talk, meaning we layer things so that it doesn't make any sense. And so nobody knows what we're really saying.
Fed speak.
But, yeah, exactly. And so she says, but this guy came out and said what the quiet part out loud. Like, he basically said, we are making digital currencies so that we can control the way that these currencies are used in economies around the world. And the next video she shared was about another guy at I don't know what he was, IMF or World Economic Forum. And he was saying that, with the way we can control these things, we'll be able to control like the welfare state. We'll be able to control like who gets what, when, and how they can use it, so that we'll know where, for example, I don't know if whoever's listening to this, you've probably seen these people. You're like, they're on welfare, yet they have 5,000 tattoos and they have gold teeth. And you're like, dude, where are you getting the money for that? Like, you're taking food stamps and you're doing all that. Like, that costs money. So that's one of the things they're going to start to control, some of the ways that currency is distributed. And once they start to control, as well as I do, you guys and all of our listeners, that you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile.
Yeah. And that's where the future is going. It's going to digital IDs, right? It's going to this zero trust, to where trust isn't required. It's verify, right? You have to verify who you are, to get on the internet, to do everything, really. And that's the way things are headed. And like you say, it'll be programmable and trackable. And how do you trust that? There is zero trust there. Looks like you want to say something, Scott.
Yeah, I was just going to say, do you guys remember that story about the lady who was upset because they cut her food stamps from $4,000 to $80? Did you guys see that story?
No.
Because she bought a brand new car. It was like a BMW.
Food stamps?
And she was on food stamps. And she's like, this is unfair. This is unconstitutional. I'm like,
okay, I think
that's
I remember
$4,000 of bonus benefits because you're pretend poor. Wow, and if you can go and afford to buy a brand new vehicle, you don't need these benefits. Like, honestly, $4,000 in food stamps a month to me is insane.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Right? the fact that the U.S. government's just throwing money away in so many different areas, and our state governments are throwing money away in so many areas, and it just is further compounding the trust issue, right? But that's how easy it is for them to control something, right? And that's just food stamps. They have 100% control over food stamps, so they can 100% affect and influence your buying. So now, if we look at it from a digital standpoint, if it goes digital, if it's blockchain, we have greater oversight to see where the money is and what's happening to it. Well, yeah, but they also have greater ability to flip switches on and off on what you can and can't do. We're already restricted in our movement. We're already restricted in what we can and can't do with our personal property. Now they're going to say you're restricted on what you can and can't do with your financial property. I mean, there was a video recently that surfaced on X. This guy was going to the banks to try to see how much money he could withdraw.
Yeah, I saw that.
And they're like, what's this for? Well, we didn't even know. We need to know. And it's in increments of $1,000. He's like, I just need a couple $1,000. What's it for? I just need my money. It's my money. I just need my money. No. You have to tell us what it's for before we'll let you use your money or let you have your money.
And then provide proof of what he was going to buy before they'd actually give it to him. Yeah.
And then a lot of these banks, if they might not even have $1,000 or 5,000, like they don't have the cash.
I'm sure that's part of it.
That's a whole nother part of it.
Well, that's the whole backing of the whole Fed. Like the debt ratio, they're allowed to lend 10 times what they supposedly have. And who knows if they've allowed that to increase more. They might be lending $20.
Well, yeah, at this point, it is 0% reserves. They don't have to hold any reserves, any cash on hand to give out to us when we go ask for cash to go buy a motorcycle. It used to be 10% and it's now 0, but obviously they've got to have some cash on hand. I'm sure it depends on the bank. I personally have not had any issues in the past couple of years getting really whatever cash I asked for, but I know that's not the case everywhere.
I've tried to pull out increments of $5,000 and more, and in those cases, they ask for 3 days. I'm sorry, that's a large amount. We don't have that much on site. Please come back in 3 days and we can have it for you, or I can give you a cashier's check today.
Wow.
There's no real money, right? It's not real money to begin with, but they don't even have cash on hand. And so here's the question then, as we're talking about all these things and the lack of trust, how do we build trust? Because scripturally we talk about this mark of the beast, and that no one's going to be able to operate unless they have the mark, right? And that those who don't get the mark won't be able to use the economy and won't be able to use that new world government. They'll be on their own. That's where we're headed, right? And we're not going to deep dive into what the mark is or all that. We just want to know, like, an alternate economy, it's an economy of trust.
Yeah.
Well, I went to Webster's dictionary, 1828 dictionary, looked up the word currency. It actually says that trust is a currency, and it says that time is a currency. I mean, that were some of the examples they showed in the definition of currency. And, currency, what's the root word? Current, flow. And there are statistics on money velocity, currency velocity, and so forth. So that is monitored how it goes through the economy. And so I think that's how I personally am kind of seeing this picture as trust as the currency of the future. And of course, looking back to see how did they back 100 years ago, whatever, what did they use as currency, right? And yes, the dollar was around, but it was completely different, right? It was actually backed by gold, like precious metals.
Well, so think about it too. Well, I was just going to say, Shane, just really quickly, and then you can continue. But you go to the general store back in the day in the 1800s, and you just say, "Hey, put it on my tab." Like the store owner trusted that eventually you're going to take care of it.
To a degree,
they taught you what you needed, and then you left, and then at some point you'd settle the books, and everything's fine. And that was all based on trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was to a limit.
By your face, not an ID. Right. Yeah. There's not an ID or a thumbprint or a signature. It was your face.
I've got family up in Idaho, and way back in our family history, there are stories of my 3 or 4 times great grandpa trading with trappers and with local Indians. They had the Blackfoot Indians up there. Still have them up there, and we used to go to their festivals every spring. It was phenomenal. But one of the most interesting things is everything was barter and trade. And there's a story of my great grandfather's son who went to go do a trade for him, and he was doing blankets for something else. But he got there and he was doing the trade, and the Indians were like, "Okay, anything else you need?" And he's like, and he got greedy and he started taking more than what he was giving. And they were like, "Okay, that's fine. That's fine." And they gave it to him and sent him home. When he got home, he was beaten by my great grandfather for dishonoring the trust that he created with the Indians. He's like, "I sent you as me to these Indians. And if we don't have trust with the Indians and traders, they won't trade with us." And so he beat him, put him back on the wagon, and took him back and gave back everything that wasn't fairly given or fairly traded.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's honor. Like, yeah, beating somebody maybe isn't the right solution in today's economy, right?
But that tribe obviously trusted your great grandfather enough to say, you know what, if this is what you're asking for, I trust you, go ahead and take it, even though it wasn't necessarily fair.
They knew that he would make it right. And to instill that into the son through beating and then taking him there, to have him punished by the shame that he's going to inflict on himself by being like, "I've got to give these back. I was dishonest. I was prideful and I was greedy, and I apologize." Right. But we can't look to government to do the same thing. They don't remedy things like that. They just take and take and take. I sent you guys a video earlier this week, the Simon Sinek video about understanding how to build trust. You can't offer help to build trust. And I was like, "Why offer help all the time?" And it's the person who's asking for help is the one that builds trust, right? If I ask you for help and you help me, I can now trust you. But if you offer me help and I haven't asked for it, it's interesting because
and
that can perpetuate what do I owe you now?
Well, it does take time, right? It's multiple experiences. It's feeling safe with that other person, that other group, that individual in your dealings or whatever it might be. Like you say, barter with the local native tribe.
So the reality is that if the grid goes down, let's just pretend that we have an SHTF and it's more of a national, maybe even a worldwide reset, whatever they're planning, and you're looking around and you're like, "Man, I need eggs," or maybe eggs for an ounce of gold. Maybe by the time eggs are valued at what they are now, maybe they are an ounce of gold for a dozen eggs. But you gotta think about that too. It's like, look, I have an ounce of gold. Well, yeah, give me the gold and I'll give you a dozen eggs. That's not fair. Like, you got to know the trust to what's the value of what you're trading versus what you're getting, and establishing a community where you can work together and trust one another. Because when you go down to maybe you go to the store or the commissary, whatever they call it in the future, the government, the military
trading post.
Yeah, you're only eating post, or you're only allowed to have so. And that's the funny thing too, is like, you might say, I served my church as a missionary in Florida, and in Florida the people were coming over from Cuba. And one of the things that as I would talk to people who were coming over to escape the refugees from Cuba, they would say, "Listen, we literally were told how much milk we could buy, how many pounds of potatoes, how many pounds of rice, what food we could get." So not only could they regulate when you can spend the money, where maybe within a certain zip code, or hey, you're traveling too far, you can't spend your digital currency this far away from home. They might even say, "Look, you're a family of whatever. You can only have a family of whatever we think only deserves 2 gallons of milk, deserves 5 pounds of rice, and 10 pounds of meat, and that's all you get for the week," or whatever they determine. And so the reality is that, okay, you might have to, and in those communities in Cuba, they would actually work together as neighbors. And the ones that you could trust, you could trade with them. The ones you couldn't trust would report you and you'd get busted. And so those
Mhm.
people lived a very solitary. If
Yeah.
if you weren't loyal to the community, you were
Mhm.
outed pretty quickly. And
Yep.
so I think that's something that's, we talked a little bit before the show as we were preparing, that loyalty and trust, I
Yeah.
think, are very synonymous, at least in this, where we're going with this currency of the future. Like, are you going to be loyal to the government and to the powers that be and to those things? Or are you going to be loyal to your neighbors and build that trust? Because if I'm, if I'm trying to get out of the system and get away from the grid and escape from that, and my neighbors like, no, we're really going to just report you. You can't trust that guy. Like, you got to.
And what do we see all over the news nowadays? Scams and fraud. And that's all possible because of our current currency, of the existing currency. If you're using gold and silver and barter, it's really not possible.
Well, but in a way it is. So there's a way to lie and steal and cheat in just about everything. Part of the demise of the Roman Empire as it transferred to a different system, when they stopped using gold and silver, was because people were cutting the corners off of it.
Yeah.
So then they had to start weighing it, right?
Mm.
But then they started smelting it or making it into a lower proof
Adding
cast.
other metals into it.
They'd put other stuff so that it was undetectable sorry, by the physical appearance or feeling, right? The senses that we can use to detect things. Like it was still a stamped product that said, hey, I'm gold, but it wasn't. And so that's the other part of trust. Like, you've got to trust that the person you're doing business with is being honest as well. And that also that they weren't defrauded when they got the gold and silver.
And one of the big reasons why the Roman Empire fell was because they started to mix the metals in their currency, and they started to change the actual intrinsic value. And, history repeats itself. That's the whole reason why. So, like, Shane, your whole, your mantra of look to the past to know the future is because history repeats itself. I mean, we got a little different, there's different people playing the instruments, but it's the same dang instruments and the same dang music, right?
Yeah.
So figure that, once you realize that, now you're like, okay, we got, instead of the denarii, being muddled down to, with a little, steel instead of silver, it's the dollar being muddled in with digital currency. Like, it's a different, it's the same story, same tune, but it's a different, thing. So I'm just, one of the things that I've realized is I've shared with some people is that, you need to have some cash on hand for the various purposes of using cash for trust with other people. But then, like, I was sharing with my buddy the other night that my gold and silver, I was telling him, like, in December, my gold and silver was a certain dollar amount. Like, I could, the value based on the current spot and everything else was a certain dollar amount. And then, like, today I looked at it and it was significantly bigger. Like, it's a comma in increase. Okay. There's a comma in the increase. And he was like, oh, dude, yeah, I should invest in gold and silver. That's so odd. Let's do it. And I said, wait a minute. Let me just give you the full story. Because if you only thought the gold was like, oh, you bought $10,000 worth of gold and 3 months later it's worth 15,000, man, you're going to go buy a bunch of gold right now, right? Well, the reality is you should buy a bunch of gold, frankly, but at least instead of having just cash, like, anyways, I said, that doesn't indicate the value of gold. That indicates how much the dollar's been devalued since December. Like, I've had the same amount of ounces for the last probably 2 years. I haven't bought any gold or silver in like maybe a year and a half or two. And my balance, like, if my value from then till now is significantly increased. And that's just because the dollar has deflated that bad. And because gold and silver tracks with inflation. Well, if the dollar is doing that bad, then no wonder the rest of the world is like, I mean, we owe what, 30 bajillion, quadrillion, like 30 trillion, whatever it is, it's ridiculous. These other countries are like, look, your dollars are, why do I want to keep these dollars when it's just going down all the time?
Inflating away.
Inflating away. So these other countries are like, so that's part of and we might see a little bit of a correction with the current administration, and we might see a little bit of a reprieve. But in the grand scheme of my life, I've been on this planet for 50 years, and a 4-year window, great. Let's take advantage of it while the sun is shining, and let's repair our roofs, and before it starts to rain again, let's build our reserves. Let's if we're gonna have a 3-4 year reprieve, let's take advantage of it. Don't sit on our laurels and just think we're gonna cruise through this with nothing, because in 10 or 20 years, I'm planning to be around for another 10 or 20, right? Like, I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not going to have the current administration 20 years from now. So I need to be ready, getting ready. Like, does that make sense? Like, I feel like if you're building trust, you're building those things now, you're going to be way better prepared for whatever life throws at you as we continue to go.
Yeah, and that's where our current leaders, you can call them air quote leaders, and the administration and past administrations, their policy is to inflate away their debt, right? Because obviously, as they print more, as our salaries go up, it makes the debt easier to pay. Same with the U.S. government, and makes our payments seem smaller, and so forth. And so, but the rest of the world sees that and sees what we're doing. The U.S. is abusing that. The government, the federal government, the Federal Reserve, and so forth, absolutely abusing that and exporting our inflation, exporting that to other countries, giving them our worthless dollar, and we get physical, tangible stuff, right? We get their goods and give them our crap for it. And for now, they're taking it. Who knows how much longer they will take it? But that just tells me there's no trust there. There's no trust. At least I don't have any in our government here that will spend an extra $2-3 trillion a year over what they take in. And obviously what Doge has been, showing us as well, which we really already knew was going on. And so, there's just no trust in that particular system. So we have to find a way ourselves, become our own banks. We've said this before, become your own bank, create your own system of trust. And the only way to do that is through community. I mean, local community, local close individuals.
There's a part of that video that she talks about how we're almost just by agreeing to be a part of the system, we're in essence saying we're okay with what you're doing as long as we get to participate in the proceeds. And so they just continue to just keep going because nobody's stopping them. What if everybody right now took their money out of the bank, bought a bunch of gold and silver, maybe became a bank of themselves? And there's fancy ways to do that. You can just kind of do your own thing, or you can use some strategic life insurance products for that. But what if you decided that you were going to figure out how to do this, even on a local level? You can pay cash for things. You can pay, use Goldback, whatever you end up doing. If we all pulled our money out of the system, they would have to quickly make some change. Like, we vote with our dollars, people.
The system couldn't tolerate us taking our money, first of all.
That's a good point. It would have, if we did it all right now, it would probably collapse the system way faster.
100%. 100%. It'd be worse than the Great Depression.
And we're not calling for a run on the banks, but this is a speculative idea.
So what I felt led years ago to liquidate my 401k and IRAs. And I was like, what the crap? And I've got friends like this guy I know, Paris, who's a financial advisor, who's like, are you crazy? But I felt prompted, and I had to follow that prompting, right? We all have to follow the promptings we get. And we don't oftentimes know the reasons why. But I did it, and I moved most of that money into food storage for myself and for some other people. Helped a lot of family members out and did some really good things with that. But I just couldn't say no to the prompting. It was such a strong prompting in following what I felt God was telling me to do. So whatever your situation, if you feel very, very strongly, I need to invest more, do it. If you feel very, very strongly, I need to diversify and pull some out and buy gold and silver, or I need to pull more out and buy food storage, or I need to buy XYZ, or I need to help so-and-so, like whatever you're being led to do that, right? We're not here to say, hey, this is exactly what you have to do with your money.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely, we need to learn how to create other mediums of exchange, or it's going to be too late when the dollar is no longer usable. And there's a period of time, I believe, that preppers are going to see this first. When things go sideways, we'll still have cash because we try to keep cash on hand, and we'll be able to use that with people who don't have a clue what's going to happen in the next few months with the cash that we're now giving them.
Think everything's great.
They'll be like, oh, well, you've got cash still? Okay, I'll sell you this for cash, right? Because the digital's gone. And then all of a sudden they'll realize after a period of time, well, the cash is useless too. It might as well be kindling.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be very thoughtful in that. How we do things, where we store things, how liquid we are, right? We've got to take everything into consideration, but also get used to going to farmers markets now. Get used to doing business and trade.
And take some silver with you.
Yeah.
Take some silver. Find out if they'll barter with it.
Absolutely. And it's fantastic. I mean, I've been able to trade my way up to some pretty cool preps through barter and trade. And I've got some pretty cool stuff that I wouldn't have bought, but I would trade for.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of ways you can do this. And I can speak from experience. The dollar only serves when it's being spent. Otherwise, what use is it? If it's an intangible, you can't get to it. To me, this is my perspective. This is not financial advice. I am not professing this is how everyone should think. But to me, it only works when I'm using it, when it's being used. Otherwise, what does it do?
We all work for dollars.
Growing. But it's just a medium of exchange.
Buy stuff, right? So we can get stuff. And I've been, had that same kind of mentality most of my life. Is I've never been one to save up in dollars. I didn't really see the purpose. We go get jobs so we can get dollars, so we can trade those dollars for things, for stuff, right? But when it comes to gold and precious metals, that had made so much more sense to me, that I have this in my hand and I hold it and I own it. And I guess kind of my closing thought is, for me, and I've said this again many times, words are important. Using words correctly is important. The words money and currency are different. They shouldn't be necessarily interchangeable. Gold is money. Everything else is credit. The dollar is currency. It is not money. It used to be backed by money, which is gold and silver. I mean, go to the Constitution. It will tell you as well, only gold and silver coin to be used as money, to be coined as money. And so if we can all use money and currency properly, and of course I learned this from Mike Maloney. Go follow him. He's a super smart guy. I've been teaching this for decades. Money is gold and silver. Currency is our dollars, is the fiat that we use. And if we change that mentality, I think we'll see more people will see the value in real money over debt notes, over obligations. That's what the dollar is.
What's interesting is the word currency. I have my son-in-law is an electrician, and the electricity that flows through the wires is also called a currency. And one of the things I've been studying recently is that wealth should be measured in time versus measured in, dollar bills, perhaps. I mean, this might be a little woo-woo for some of you, but if you think about it, you trade your hour of energy for whatever the highest bidder is willing to give you for it. How much? And then every time you purchase a home or a car or all the stuff that you buy, the stuff in the Stoics believe that the more stuff you have, the more that those things own you. The more stuff you own, the more they own you, because you now have to expend energy. For example, if you bought a really fancy car, you might be able to afford it with dollar bills, but now you've got all this energy of like, oh my gosh, what if it gets scratched? What if it gets hit? What if it gets hurt? If you go to the mechanic, now it's $2,000 a pop versus, a Toyota is like $100, for the oil change versus, some Lamborghini, which is like a grand, So you're actually, it owns you now, and it becomes, you've got to continue to trade that time, that energy, that not just the hour, but the mental energy to maintain it. And so I'm now in a place where I'm thinking, you know what? I want to get my time back. I want to get my energy back and put it towards things that I want to do. So not that I'm going to go full blown minimalist, but at the same time, I'm just going to be smarter with how I spend my currency, energy, to get currency, dollars. And what I'm going to use those things for is to be able to, is now I'm thinking a little bit more about what I'm going to do with it when I get it, and how I'm going to use it to get my time back, and be able to then go pursue things that are going to be more meaningful, that are going to be more what I want to do. And I feel like you have to trust I think the first person you need to trust is yourself. One of the big problems with, I think, with mental health right now is that we say we'll do something, and then we get distracted by social media and we don't do it. And so we now lose trust in ourselves. We lose trust that we're going to accomplish the goal. We set a goal and we don't hit it. And so we kind of let ourselves off the hook because nobody's keeping us accountable. But in our mental minds, we're not trusting. We don't trust ourselves. And so if you can't trust yourself, how are you going to trust other people? So my final thought is, learn to trust yourself. Make a commitment, make a covenant, make whatever you feel like, make a promise to yourself every day, one or two things, and then build on that every day, one or two more things, until you can really trust yourself. And once you can trust yourself, then you can look at others and you can see the attributes, because you just went through it for yourself. Now you can see the attributes in others, and you can discern in others because it's in you. You can discern, and like attracts like, light attracts light, darkness attracts darkness. And you'll see other people, hey, that guy is fulfilling his promises to himself like I am. If I can trust me and he can trust him, we can probably trust each other. And so that's something that might be a little woo-woo at the end here, but
no, I love that. That's fantastic. And you know, the best way to learn to trust yourself, don't even buy the cookies. Leave them at the store. Because if they're in the kitchen, I'm going to eat them. You know, that's just what it comes down to. So I don't even buy them anymore, because I don't trust myself. You know, it's part of an addiction, I guess, too, right? Pastries, cookies. Anyway, off topic.
Real, dude. Scott, what do you have to say? You got to close this out, brother.
You can't ask me now. I'm on a diet, and I'm trying to heal my body, and I'm over here trying to do things different, doing things I've never done before. And
that's a lot of trust.
Building new trust in myself, right? I'm addicted to food more than anybody. Look at me. I'm the biggest one of us. And my lean mass is 173 pounds. That's if you took all the fat off my body. Guys,
wow.
I got a problem.
So you need 8%, 10, 12%. You gotta.
But that's just my lean mass. Like I get tested. So way off topic, but bringing it back to money and currency and trust. It's like trust is built over time, just the way a muscle is built over time. I can lift 10 pounds. Well, now I can lift 20 pounds, right? And the greater the strength, the greater the ability, the more trust can be accompanied with it. I could go and I could do stuff for either one of you. I could trade time for anything. Whatever you guys feel is fair to trade with me. I could give my time, and vice versa. I feel like we all have that trust between us that way, but it's taken time to build, just like it takes time to build a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And when things go sideways, the people you have trust with will be far and few between compared to those who are asking for your stuff and asking for your help. And so you need to be very aware of that. And you need to be very cautious and very non-disclosurely, I don't know, very obtuse to the world. Like, don't let them know anything.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it all hush hush, because you know what you have. Nobody else should know what you have. You know what you can do. Nobody else should know what you can do to the full extent. except when it comes to, I can build XYZ for you in exchange for something else, right? They need to see that you've been able to do something before where they'll be able to trade with you and know that they can get their money's worth or their trade's worth for what you're going to do for them. That's my closing.
I like it.
Closing arguments. Thank you,
That was
Judge.
very good. So basically, you're saying we need to trust one another and move forward.
We need to serve one another to learn to earn trust.
There we go. That's a good point.
If you want to earn trust, serve somebody. You serve somebody and they're going to be like, oh, wow. Okay. With nothing in exchange. Like, just give your time away to people who need it and deserve it. Like, they're going to have so much trust in you. And that's going to go miles and miles beyond where a dollar can get you.
Very good. Well, you've been listening to Prepper Talk Radio, Radio for the Ready-Minded, with your hosts, Scott, Shane, and Paris. We're super excited that you spent the last few minutes with us. Hopefully you got value out of it. And if you did, make sure that wherever you're listening, you give us a 5-star review or whatever you feel we deserve. We'd like to have more. The more we get, the more the algorithm pushes out our podcast. And so we'd really appreciate a 5-star review if you feel like we deserve that. Also, just remember, as a reminder, last episode, or I think it was the last episode, I shared with you that I created a discount code for those that want to have an opportunity to sit down with me and help them with their finances. And you can go to parisclough.com/Prepper Talk Radio. And I believe you'll get a chance to go there. And if you go there and use that link, you'll get a 10% discount on all of my digital products that are there. So that's a good way for you to kind of get an opportunity to sit down with me and talk. Those of you who are listening are probably preppers, obviously, and of course I'm biased. You probably want to have the advice of a financial advisor who's also a prepper, because it's a very different set of advice that a prepper financial planner will give you than a regular Wall Street financial planner and coach would give you. So anyways, that's my 2 cents at the end there. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day and take care.
See you next week.
See you guys.